What if the first words you say to yourself each morning could change your entire day? Not just hype, but real power, grounding truths that set the tone before the world gets a chance to. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover 5 simple things to tell yourself every morning, 5 phrases that don't just motivate you, but lead you, because when you own your mindset, you lead your life. And it all starts before your feet even hit the floor. Every day begins with unpredictability. There are emails you weren't expecting, people who challenge your patience, and situations that test your boundaries. The world doesn't always show up how we hope it will, but what determines the quality of your day is not the chaos around you, but the calm within you. The power to decide how you respond, not react, is one of the most liberating truths you can carry into your morning. When you wake up and remind yourself that you have control over your reactions, you take ownership of your inner world. It's easy to believe that others are responsible for how we feel. They made me mad, or he ruined my day. But these are illusions. No one climbs inside your mind and presses emotional buttons. It's what we allow that sticks. By choosing your reaction, you reclaim your peace from the grip of outside forces. Consider how quickly moods shift. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and immediately you're tense, jaw clenched, heart racing. You carry that energy with you into work, into your tone, into how you see the day. But what if that moment was just a moment, not a story? What if you could see it, feel it briefly, and let it pass like clouds in the sky? That's not denial. That's emotional leadership. That's choosing to remain rooted when the wind picks up. The habit of reacting automatically is often built from years of emotional conditioning. Maybe you were taught that anger is the only way to be heard, or that defensiveness is protection. But those patterns, while familiar, may no longer serve you. Every morning is a fresh opportunity to reset, to look at those patterns and ask, do I want to keep doing this, or is it time to respond differently? In that question lies the first spark of freedom. Emotional control doesn't mean suppressing what you feel. It means observing it long enough to understand it before expressing it. Imagine someone says something disrespectful to you. The old script might be to fire back, to match energy with energy. But what if the new script is to pause, breathe, and choose your response with intention? That doesn't make you weak. That makes you wise. The strongest people aren't those who shout the loudest, but those who speak from a centered place, even in the face of chaos. In every conversation, every challenge, every moment of tension, you're offered a choice: fuel the fire or stand in the calm. Reacting is instinctual. Responding is intentional. The pause between stimulus and action is where power lives. That pause is your space. That pause is your protection. Reactions often come from ego, the part of you that wants to win, prove, or defend. But responses come from awareness, the part of you that wants peace, clarity, and growth. When you start your day grounded in the truth that you control your reactions, you become less controlled by the noise around you. You listen without absorbing, observe without internalizing, and feel without drowning. There's strength in softness, there's clarity in stillness, there's wisdom in waiting. The world often rushes to get the last word, to win the argument, to assert control. But the real winners are those who can hold their ground without raising their voice. Those who can walk away from drama without needing to explain. Those who can maintain their inner temperature regardless of what room they walk into. This kind of control isn't about perfection. It's about progress. You'll slip. You'll overreact. You'll raise your voice or let your emotions lead, but the goal is not to never feel. The goal is to feel and still choose. The more you practice this in small moments, traffic, spilled coffee, a rude comment, the more it becomes second nature in the big moments. Emotional mastery isn't built overnight. It's built in the quiet, daily decisions to pause before reacting. Think of yourself as a thermostat, not a thermometer. A thermometer changes based on its environment. It gets hotter when the room does, but a thermostat sets the temperature. It leads the environment. When you operate from a place of internal control, you don't just survive the day, you shape it. You walk into rooms with calm energy that shifts the dynamic. You approach people with understanding, not assumption. You leave situations knowing you acted from character, not impulse. This kind of self-control ripples outward. People begin to feel safe around you, not because you never get upset, but because they trust you won't lose yourself in conflict. Your steadiness becomes a lighthouse for others, and more importantly, it becomes a sanctuary for you. Every morning, as you face the unknowns ahead, remind yourself that you're in charge of your inner world. You might not get to script the events of the day, but you always get to script your response. And in that power, in that pause, is the kind of strength that builds trust, respect, and peace, both with others and with yourself. There's an unspoken pressure that creeps in the moment your eyes open, the feeling that you're already behind on goals, behind on life milestones, behind where you thought you'd be by now. It's like there's a race happening and everyone else got a head start while you're still tying your shoes. But the truth is, there is no universal timeline. Life doesn't hand out gold medals for rushing. And when you start your day, reminding yourself that you are not behind, that you are exactly where you're meant to be, you begin to release the weight of comparison that's been quietly suffocating your joy. Society has built a timeline that feels more like a checklist. Achieve this by 25, settle down by 30, succeed by 35, retire rich by 50. These expectations seep into your thoughts without you realizing it. You scroll through photos of friends celebrating promotions, engagements, babies, vacations, and in that moment, it's easy to feel like your own life is missing something. But those snapshots are curated. They're not the full picture. They don't show the silent battles, the doubts, the setbacks. What you see is the destination, not the detour. Each person is on a different path with a different pace, shaped by unique circumstances, choices, and challenges. Just because someone else reached a milestone sooner doesn't mean you're late. You're not delayed, you're developing. Growth happens in silence, in the in-between, in the spaces no one posts about. It happens when you're still trying to figure it out, still pushing through self-doubt, still getting up after every fall. When you say to yourself, I am not behind, you're not ignoring your ambitions. You're not saying that you're satisfied with stagnation. You're affirming that your journey doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be meaningful. You're choosing patience over panic, purpose over pressure. You're recognizing that progress isn't always loud. Sometimes it's slow, quiet, even invisible, but it's happening. There's a difference between movement and momentum. You might not be crossing major finish lines every day, but that doesn't mean you're stuck. Showing up counts, learning counts, healing counts, resting counts. Every small action you take is a brick in the foundation of something bigger. And sometimes the most meaningful growth happens in the seasons when nothing seems to be moving on the surface. This mindset shift changes how you carry yourself through the day. Instead of rushing to keep up, you begin to move with intention. Instead of measuring your worth by someone else's timeline, you start to measure it by your own values. You stop asking, why am I not there yet? And start asking, what am I learning right here? That question alone unlocks clarity, because when you're not obsessed with reaching the next chapter, you're free to actually live in the current one. There's peace in trusting your own pace. Life is not a checklist, it's a canvas. And every delay, every detour adds depth and texture to your story. The things you're experiencing now are shaping you in ways that will matter more later. You might not see it yet, but trust that every unanswered prayer, every no, every closed door is creating the path that's truly yours. And it's not just about big life goals. Even in the smallest moments, waking up tired, missing a workout, forgetting something important, you can be tempted to beat yourself up, to say, I should have done better, or I'm falling behind. But grace belongs in your inner dialogue too. There's no award for pushing yourself to the brink. There's strength in starting where you are with what you have, without shame or guilt attached to the pace you're moving at. Some days you'll feel like you're flying. Other days it'll feel like you're dragging your feet through mud. Both days count. Both are necessary. You don't have to sprint every morning to be making progress. Even the slow, hard, quiet days are steps forward, especially those days. That's where endurance is built. That's where self-trust is formed. That's where the future version of you is quietly being shaped. People will always be ahead of you in something. That's just reality. But it's not a race, it's a path. And on your path, you're not behind, you're just on your way. There are lessons you wouldn't have learned if you rushed, people you wouldn't have met, strengths you wouldn't have developed. The D, lays you resent may actually be divine protection or preparation. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to. When you carry this mindset into your morning, your day starts with confidence instead of comparison. You're not wasting energy resenting what you lack or rushing to catch up. You're focused, grounded, and aware that your life moves according to your growth, not anyone else's. That's power. That's peace. That's how you turn pressure into presence. The loudest voice you hear every day is your own. And when that voice tells you you're not behind, that you are right on time, it creates space for hope, patience, and clarity to thrive. It quiets the noise of comparison and amplifies your own sense of purpose. You stop chasing life and start aligning with it, and from that space, everything becomes possible. There's a quiet courage in speaking up, not the kind that demands attention or dominates a room, but the kind that simply tells the truth, even if your voice trembles. Every morning when you remind yourself that your voice matters, you affirm your right to exist fully, not in silence or suppression, but in presence. It's not about being the loudest person in the room or having all the perfect words. It's about choosing honesty over fear, authenticity over comfort, and truth over approval. Many people grow up learning to shrink, to stay quiet, to keep opinions to themselves because they were told they were too sensitive, too emotional, too much. Over time, that silence becomes a habit. You start to second-guess what you feel, worry about being judged, or avoid conflict entirely. But your voice is a reflection of your values, your boundaries, your needs, and when you silence it, you chip away at your own sense of identity. Every time you speak up, you're reinforcing to yourself that you are worthy of taking up space, worthy of expression. Sing your thoughts, worthy of being heard. Even if not everyone agrees, it's not about convincing others. It's about standing in your truth. Your voice doesn't need validation to matter. It matters because it's yours. There will be moments when fear creeps in, the fear of rejection, embarrassment, or not knowing the right thing to say. But silence out of fear is a cage. You might think you're protecting yourself, but you're really hiding. And hiding from your truth never leads to peace. It leads to resentment, especially when the things left unsaid build up over time like pressure in a sealed jar. Speaking up doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean you need to argue or prove your point. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "That didn't feel right," or "I see it differently." It's about honoring your inner voice, even if it quivers, even if it stumbles, even if it's met with resistance. Because the more you use your voice, the stronger it becomes. The more you stand in your truth, the more confident you become in holding your ground. This applies to every area of life, your relationships, your career, your boundaries. If something isn't working, if something hurts, if something needs to be said, your voice is the instrument that makes change possible. Waiting for others to read your mind only leads to unmet expectations and quiet frustration. But when you express your truth, you create clarity. You give others a chance to understand where you stand and what you need. And yes, there's risk involved. Not everyone will agree with you. Not everyone will be comfortable with your truth. But silence is a risk too. A risk of living a life misaligned with who you are. The goal isn't to be universally accepted. The goal is to be honest with yourself, to live in a way that doesn't betray your own soul just to keep the peace around you. Even in professional settings, your voice has power. Whether you're offering an idea in a meeting, asking a question, or setting a boundary with a coworker, those moments build self-respect. It's not about being flawless. It's about showing up with sincerity and presence. The people who lead with impact are often the ones who lead with vulnerability, those who dare to speak truth with compassion, not arrogance. There are also internal voices, the ones that live in your mind, whispering doubts or replaying past mistakes. That internal dialogue matters just as much as what you say to others. When you begin your day by telling yourself that your voice matters, you shift that inner dialogue from criticism to encouragement. You start replacing self-doubt with self-trust. You stop needing permission to speak, you give it to yourself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is something simple: no, or I'm not okay, or I need help. These aren't signs of weakness, they're signs of self-awareness and strength. Pretending you're fine or overextending yourself just to please others isn't noble, it's unsustainable. Honoring your voice means listening to your needs and respecting your emotional truth, even when it's uncomfortable. There's also a ripple effect to speaking up. When you use your voice, you give others permission to use theirs. Your courage becomes a mirror for someone else's potential. Especially in spaces where silence has been the norm, your voice can break generational cycles. It can shift cultures. It can open hearts. Change doesn't always come from massive speeches. Sometimes it begins with one honest sentence spoken in a room that's used to silence. You won't always get it right. You'll fumble. You'll say things you wish you phrased better. But progress is messy. What matters most is showing up and speaking anyway. Over time, those shaky words turn into solid truth. That hesitation becomes conviction. You build the muscle of self-expression not by thinking about it, but by practicing it. Each day brings new opportunities to affirm that your voice has value, whether it's asserting a boundary, sharing an opinion, or simply being honest with yourself. You are practicing self-leadership. The world doesn't need more silence born from fear. It needs voices that speak with intention, that carry integrity, that lead with heart. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to speak from a place that's real. And when you do, when you speak, even if it shakes, you're not just communicating, you're declaring your presence. You're standing in the truth that you matter. Your experiences, your thoughts, your emotions, they are valid and they deserve to be heard. Before the world demands your attention, before your phone lights up with messages, before deadlines start chasing you, there's a sacred moment in the morning where you get to decide how you'll lead yourself. That moment matters more than most people realize, because how you lead yourself sets the tone for how you move through everything that follows. Your emotions, your focus, your standards, your choices, they all respond to the direction you give them. Leadership isn't just about guiding others, it's about how well you guide yourself when no one's watching. It's the discipline you hold yourself to when there's no external reward, the choices you make when shortcuts are available, and the attitude you carry into situations that test your patience and integrity. And that kind of leadership begins the moment you wake up. Leading yourself starts with awareness. Being honest about where you are mentally, emotionally, and physically. Not just pushing through your day on autopilot, but checking in with yourself. Asking the hard questions. What do I need today? Where am I slipping? What's driving my choices, my values, or my fears? That kind of self-inquiry isn't about perfection, it's about responsibility. It's about knowing that no one is coming to rescue your goals, your health, your peace. That job belongs to you. Every time you choose clarity over confusion, structure over chaos, and intention over impulse, you're leading yourself. It might look simple: waking up when your alarm rings, making your bed, choosing the harder but wiser option. But those small decisions form the framework of your character. It's in those private, seemingly minor moments that your future is quietly being built. When you decide to lead yourself, you stop waiting for motivation to appear. You stop waiting for the perfect moment, the right mood, or someone else's permission. You start operating on your standards, not your feelings. Because feelings are temporary, they come and go like weather. But standards, when rooted in values, provide direction even when emotions are inconsistent. That's what separates reactive days from intentional ones. A reactive day is shaped by circumstance. You're tossed around by whatever comes your way: emails, bad news, other people's moods. An intentional day is led from the inside out. You decide your mindset. You choose how you'll show up. You remind yourself what matters and let that guide your actions. It doesn't mean the day will be perfect, but it means you'll remain anchored even when the winds change. One of the most powerful forms of self-leadership is emotional regulation. choosing to pause before responding, choosing to listen without interrupting, choosing to express what you feel without projecting it onto others. When you lead yourself emotionally, you become the kind of person people trust, respect, and feel safe around, not because you're emotionless, but because you're grounded. That emotional control doesn't come from suppressing your feelings. It comes from being aware of them and deciding how to channel them constructively. And it starts in the morning, how you talk to yourself, how you set your tone, how you visualize your day. Do you feed stress and doubt, or do you speak clarity and confidence into your reflection? What you say to yourself before the world says anything to you shapes how you carry yourself in every interaction. There's also a layer of self-leadership that deals with boundaries, not just with other people, but with your own distractions. Choosing not to scroll first thing in the morning, choosing not to let negativity in before you've grounded yourself, choosing to protect your energy from the start so you're not constantly playing defense all day. Boundaries aren't just walls, they're filters that preserve your focus, protect your time, and prioritize your peace. Self-leadership is also about owning your habits, not just knowing what you should do, but actually doing it, even when it's boring, even when it's hard. The repetition of small, consistent actions is what separates goals from wishful thinking. Every morning, you get up and follow through on your workout, on your reading, on your commitments. You're sending a message to yourself. I can count on me. That kind of trust changes everything. It also shows up in how you treat others. When you lead yourself first, you stop expecting other people to regulate your emotions. You don't dump your frustration on someone just because you're overwhelmed. You take a breath, you check your tone. You remind yourself that leadership isn't about being in control of others, it's about being in control of yourself. So you show up with grace, patience, and strength even under pressure. And when you fall short, which you will, you own it. That's part of self-leadership too, not making excuses or pointing fingers, but looking inward and saying, that one's on me, then learning from it, adjusting, course correcting. Growth doesn't require perfection, it requires honesty. When you lead yourself, you don't let shame define your failures. You let accountability drive your next move. You also stop waiting for external circumstances to shift before you decide to be your best. It's easy to say, I'll be disciplined when life slows down, or I'll be focused when I'm in a better place. But the truth is, the better place comes after you choose discipline, after you show up consistently, after you start acting like the person you want to become. Self-leadership is deciding to be ready now, not someday. Leadership doesn't start with titles. It starts with decisions, with how you start your morning, with the way you speak to yourself when no one's listening, with the habits you choose when no one's watching. If you can lead yourself with integrity, focus, and compassion, you'll walk into every room, every relationship, every challenge with confidence, because you won't be led by the chaos. You'll be led by your character,